Hello, everyone. Today, I have the pleasure to have another conversation with Professor Fred van Enenaam. I am Christine Koetsier, CEO of GEM and strategic partner of Boardwise. Together, we do placements for directors and executives in the US and in the EU. We have the pleasure to work together with Fred van let me say Dr. Professor Fred van Enenaam. From the Decision Institute, also located in Amsterdam, just like myself. And the Decision Institute is known for their excellent work in strategy, digital transformation, and of course, corporate governance. And they work heavily on new models, innovative situations and solutions for corporates. Fred is directing the golden standard of executive corporate governance education in Harvard, together with the Harvard faculty. The program is called Maximize Your Board Potential, and we're very, very delighted to work together on this wonderful program. Today, we want to pick up on the issue of, and the topic, the issues around and the topic of shared value. Fred, as an introduction, we know that the term shared value is brought to us to one of your mentors, and Michael Porter. He's valuing you highly, and the term shared value is already brought into the world by Michael Porter and yourself since 2010, 11, 13. And as you know, in relevance to this podcast, we like to always keep on the glasses. What is happening in the US compared to what is happening in the EU? How can we learn from each other, and how can we work together on this topic? Well, first of all, maybe would you mind introducing us for correctness of understanding the academic background of shared value to the term shared value?
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Christine. It's quite an interesting term, and it's already, what was it, 2010, 2011, that Porter and Kramer and other came up with the term shared value and shared value creation. And to put it rather simple, it is to make sure that we address social problems, big social problems that we all are aware of, in terms of education, in terms of health, in terms of economic developments, in terms of ecological developments. So we need to address those big issues on the one hand, and on the other hand, make sure that we do that from a business perspective. So we need to create a margin on the business side, and we also need to improve the social and the shared value creation. That's basically the idea. And ever since, it has been almost a revolution for those companies that decided to try to basically address both issues at the same time. That's basically the fundamental idea.
And Fred, isn't it the truth that businesses and corporates have always been busy with this, and some awareness around societal responsibility, as we would call it, perhaps?
Yeah, I think you're right. And in one angle, you may say this is to basically reset capitalism, or as Porter would say, this is a higher level of capitalism, or actually how it was intended to be. We created firms to address society's needs. That's what we fundamentally decided in starting to do that firm-wise. And then apparently along the way, we sort of got hung up on let's only focus on net present value or on free cash flow or only on the financial metrics, and let's take the rest for granted. And if need be, we are willing to spend some money for a license to operate or for a PR or to do something back for the community. But our mindset was a profit and business. and that's it. And let's see that it's not that we are still decent citizens. And that has long been the idea. Certainly around the 80s and the 90s and the 2000s, that business was there just to make a profit, and automatically that would be good for everybody. And of course, we figured out that that's not the case. I think the CSR people in the US deserve a lot of credit. The corporate social responsibility people saying, you must create a business model that is not damaging society, because if it's damaging society, it's also ultimately going to damage you. And that has resulted in some sort of a transfer of knowledge and a transfer of money, but it did not strengthen the business model of the companies. And that is what shared value tries to do. In Europe, I think we have a slightly different history there, certainly continental Europe, where it's a little bit called sustainability, societal care, but it often took the form of charity, of setting up foundations, of doing some good. But that meant the moment you did that really well, people start knocking on your company's door to give you more money. And actually, you do not get a fundamental scalable change. So both models sort of were good. I mean, there's nothing against doing that. However, it's not moving the needle. And since we are so aware these days, more than ever probably, of the social problems and ecological problems and the governance problems we see around the world, you may see the social development goals of the United Nations, the declarations of people saying we need to look at stakeholders and not only shareholders. So it's sort of this awareness, and that we need to change a little bit on how we think about the role of the firm and the role of the corporate beyond avoiding doing evil, let me put it that way, but becoming part of the solution, not of the problem. And that is basically what Porter and his group bring forward to companies like Walmart and others, saying, we need, as firms and as boards, help our firms address the big social issues and help create a business model in doing that, because then we can scale, and we do not need more taxes or more charities, because that's not going to be sustainable. And that's basically how it started. And I think now, 2019, 2020, we see that we figured out that it may actually be the answer to the fact on what do we expect from businesses in the future? What do our employees expect? What do our consumers expect? That we are not just corporate citizens. No. We are part of the solution, and we do this high level of capitalism. This is what capitalism was for, addressing big social needs and issues in a business way, not to compete on small nitty-gritty, different colors, different tricks, different supply chains, marginal issues. No, it's the big things that we need to address with our societies, and that is what business is and was for. And we may have been deviated to a very narrow idea of capitalism, and we really need to reset this idea of capitalism. And we as board members should be, I think it's a normative statement, should be active in pursuing, in having our boards and having the new generations of managers really work in that angle. Otherwise, businesses will, just in the self-interest of businesses will be scrutinized, will be overtaxed, will be blamed, sometimes rightfully, but will also be blamed for evil that they don't do. We should become a solution, and of course we can make a profit, but we should not reap off society, which we, let's face it, which we have been accused of, and sometimes we have done.
Yeah, so it looks like there are some alternative models and initiatives showing up. When we spoke beforehand, you also mentioned, and I know them too, the SDGs,
Yes.
and from the UN, of course, and then also we have a matrix around the economic social governance.
Right.
Could you shine a light on that in the context of how useful this type of tools are for board members here in Europe and there in the US?
Right. Let me start for Europe. That's a little bit easier for me. But so what we've seen in Europe is that we have a lot of this integrated reporting. So we have sustainability indexes and companies voluntarily or semi-voluntarily started reporting on the CO2 emissions and a whole list of things that is important for society. It's a sort of in an annual report, and it's okay. And the basic idea was the moment it's measured and the moment it's reported, there will be more attention to it by managers to do something with that. Well, that's hard for managers, right? What am I going to do? Am I going to deliver the budget, or am I going to deliver the CO2 reduction? And I know I should think about doing both at the same way. And conceptually, I understand if I optimize my processes, I probably get lower CO2 and I get a lower bottom line. However, man, that's a lot of work, and I still need to get this fixed within my budget period. That's hard to do. So it created some sort of a tension there and some pressure there. But it's good. But it didn't work that way to make it implementable. Now, looking at the US, I see actually a broader range of approaches. So you see some companies that have really embraced, whether they call it shared value or did the, let's say, the more advanced levels of CSR, really said, we start with the purpose, we start with the social purpose, and I put my money where my mouth is. If it need be, we're going to go for the social cause and less for the company cause, or some of the NGOs that actually are making a profit, but doing that only to solve that. We don't know that extreme version in Europe. I think it's a very good version. I also seen in the US where it's really greenwashing, where it's really sort of PR, doing good, and trying to attract new talented employees. But the heart of the matter was, we stated there, we think it's important, but if the decisions are there, it's purely a shareholder financial arrangement, and that's a little bit more extreme. But that's at least what I think we see. So the European side is trying to measure it, having some leading companies doing it, but harder to implement. US, from the extreme greenwashing, at least in my view, to really dedicated trying to do this. So what does the shared value bit now do today? And we've seen the goals, and that's beyond the fact that sometimes you will not get a project if you cannot show that you comply, right? And I think that's good in supply chains. You need to comply, otherwise the government's not going to recruit you, and you won't get it. Or that employees say you need to do that, or that some financial institutions say we want you to show that that you are not too low. But that's all sort of a managerial addressing the issue, but it's not from a shared value angle fundamentally addressing big social issues at a profit. That's a different thing. And the latest development I see there is we struggle with the metrics. We have financial metrics, and we have a balanced scorecard metrics maybe, and we have sort of this social sustainability stuff, and now I'm all confused. And the latest development is to create metrics for managers where they call it hybrid metrics, where they say, we want the financial metrics, but we divide it via the social metrics. So an easy example is in banking, for instance, saying, how much money did we make from the average person having an account with us? Okay, divided by how much better are these people off in terms of money. Then we have a sort of a social, and we have a sort of a business metrics. And you see this hybrid development, and trying to say, we measure it, and we want people to be responsible for this hybrid measure, not actually being responsible for the financial, and then sort of struggle with how do I make sure we're not out of line in sustainability. And we see that on both sides actually of the pond. Big big issue here in Europe is where I think the US people know if we want to address a social problem, we need to scale up. And the US has been marvelous in scaling up. If I look at Walmart, if I look at I mean, the US is big. So you have a history of scaling up. And you know how you need to scale up and how you need money as oxygen and profit to scale up. Europeans are not used so much to that scale up. And I think we need a little bit on this side of the pond, the implementation power of the US. And I think the US may need a little bit of our creativity and thinking about how you get both things going and take a little bit of time. You don't do this in 3 months. You need a little bit more time to get this going.
Yeah, so we are definitely on the learning curve in this way.
We are.
And also what I hear you saying is that it's like, you know, the old-fashioned cost plays, that we bring the societal needs, the stakeholder needs,
right,
when correctly translated, to the right cost place.
Yes.
May I just conclude that for board members, tools like different matrices, like what you mentioned, we have the SDGs, we have the economic, societal
right.
governance, and you call it a hybrid model.
Right.
And those are wonderful tools for both sides of the pond to help to activate and ride the wave of responsibility translated in shared value models. Is that a correct statement?
Oh yeah, I think it's typically how we as boards, of course, try to have a policy in place, see what we need to do, and then of course it needs to be measured, and we need to see that it works. And so that's why I think these apart from integrated reporting and all the other control mechanisms that we have, that we use those hybrid measures and maybe use those hybrid measures to challenge the managers in saying, how can you get both wealth, for instance, for the people that have an account with you, and at the same time create more wealth for our shareholders? How can we do both at the same time instead of having those two sort of divided? And that's probably from our role a possibility to boost this new way of working, basically, and hopefully excite people to do it. I mean, most people are not that thrilled to only generate cash and see that it's at the expense of others. That's not what people on both sides of the ponds prefer to do.
If we listen well to them, that is.
If we listen to them, yeah, and I wouldn't say for everybody, but it's certainly what I think is the way forward.
Yeah, and if we stay in the shared value idea, the principles. So, we started by saying, guys, this is not new stuff.
No,
but
no,
it's super relevant. If we look at the pandemic, and we are all in the midst of it. And if we then look at employee health, how can we relate that to the model of shared value? And how can we encourage and motivate and raise awareness around that? And what can board members do?
It's probably one of the questions of today. What did we miss, right? And not just as a risk, but what did we miss, and what is it fundamentally, and how to learn from it and correct it. I think the first learning, what people like me and shared value people would say, is there's a much deeper connect in this situation between healthcare and economics or business. So we may have thought that the only issue here is we need to have the right health insurance, and the cheaper the better, or we need our governments to run a very efficient, low-cost system, and that's what it is. As long as we don't need to pay too much. If it's not too large a percentage of our national income, we're okay. and the problem is that they need to run it better. They need to run it better. And we see that this is an immense connect because our health systems were not we're not suited, we're not able, we're not managed properly enough to run this pandemic. And this is not Ebola, right? It's still a horrible virus, but in March in my country we were afraid it would be Ebola, and then it would be an entirely different pandemic. So it's not even, I'm reluctant to say, but it's not even that harsh of a pandemic. There can be worse. And even then we already were not able to. But that's one thing. But it shows how strongly that is connected with our business and our employees and our society, and the fact that we see tremendous effects in health, in business, in the division in our countries. It's contributing to that. So that's a deeper connect. That's the first thing. That shared value, people said we need to understand that there's a deeper connect between business and society, and that we cannot just sort of let others do that. So that's one thing. The other thing is, if you think about it from a shared value perspective, suppose in our business we would have a better deal with the providers of care, who sort of were not the cheapest, but say, we're going to keep your people healthy. And every employer knows to having people healthy and be able to show up at work, that's important. Now, if we had with our healthcare provider better tests, if our people were healthier, so more resilient to the pandemic, if they could be treated faster, then we would have a benefit for our business. We would certainly have a benefit for the people. We would also have a benefit for the hospital, because they, or the health providers, because they would be able to provide better services. We're not there yet on how to do this, but I see companies like Walmart, in my country, companies like Philips, who are active in healthcare, really starting to rethink on how they may not only protect their own employees and attract those employees and make sure the business is running, but also how that may impact their business on a positive note, and how it can strengthen hospitals and providers. Because if the providers are only paid by health insurers or only paid by governments, so far we know they are underperforming at the cost for us all. So I think we're gonna see after this pandemic a boom of rethinking how we should collaborate with the healthcare system, not just selling them stuff, but to really think about how can we make our communities better, how can we get our employees better, how can we make sure that it's a deeper sense of collaboration, and move healthcare forward, not just looking at it as a cost.
Is this higher level of capitalism a good friend of politics?
Okay, well, it should be, and the answer to it is hard to, but it's twofold. I think if I was a politician, what I'm not, but if I was a politician, I should really want to tap into the strength of business, not to get reelected or to get bigger funds. That may be another thing, but I wanted to tap into the ability of business to innovate, to come with better solutions to problems and scale up, and then do that together with governments, and to do that together with NGOs and other groups to address a social issue. So I would certainly know that if I'm against firms, or if I just give them perks, easy tax cuts or things like that, without any real contribution except you provide work. So that's what I would try to do as a politician. But I know in the US it's darn hard. it's very hard to explain to certain parts of politicians that, put it rather simple, that not all business is evil, that capitalism is a good thing, but it needs to be reset in many ways, and that I think is one thing. If I would be working on business, you certainly see in some countries where you can say they're failed states, where it's not possible, to put it to the extreme. Then you see businesses together with communities taking up the schools. and the school system,
Yeah.
taking up the water issues, making sure agriculture works, jointly make a bridge because we need the bridge. But that's then more from a business angle in saying, hey, you guys in politics, that's fine what you do, but we need you to bring society together, and now we're sort of going to take the helm there. So I think it's ultimately, can you, with respect to everybody's roles and everybody's, can you find a sustained a collaboration that will do one thing, and that is to move forward the communities and society on these dimensions, and not just one pulling on the other anything. I don't want to be naive in that sense, but we have not seen in capitalism any way forward or other way forward than finding this way of doing that.
Yeah.
And so
Integrative
it comes from,
progression, huh?
and
Integrative progression, I would call
yes,
it.
I think it's a nice word, and I think, and I was always being reluctant, to be fair, on the role of NGOs,
Yeah.
and my perspective is certainly when I'm in the US is that it's often a sort of a fight for many reasons. There's an issue, and as long as we fight big firms, then we get more members or more money, and let's not solve the problem, right? Because then my institution will go down, and I certainly don't want to collaborate. I want to protest. So that's a history. It's pretty strong. In Europe, varies a little bit, but certainly we also have our yellow jerseys. But we have those extreme MER groups and approaches which play a role and may be useful. But we also see these NGOs that have members and really try to address an issue, get plastic out of the ocean, make sure that the water is okay, make sure that certain parts of society that are underprivileged, even whatever we try to do, will have access to job markets and things like that. So we see those NGOs, and the role of NGOs beyond raising an issue, which is important, but beyond raising an issue, but forcing maybe or seducing politicians from different levels and companies together with them to meaningfully address this is something that I think is the way forward. I think this society and these groups and these NGOs, online, offline, or whatever, will basically set the agenda. And if we are in a board, everybody in a board member knows two questions for any others. Number one is, if we're in trouble, who are our friends who are willing to stand up for us, not just in court, but in the media, to say you're not that bad? Who are they? and that's one question. Well, we may want to add to this list, who are our partners on these social issues that we are a part of, whether we are a part of it because it's a negative side effect and we need to think about it and we want to absorb that, or which we can help in a social effect. So I think this dance with NGOs will become central, and I think we as board members probably will try our executives to start navigating that and not do it from a greenwashing or purely a defensive angle, but say, wait a minute, we need to create these NGOs or help those NGOs in forcing us to be better. But we can ask them to do things as well with us, and that is what I see moving forward in what we would call, or Porter would certainly call, the high level of capitalism. So we are aware of the issues. Business has been underplaying, been the evil, or be very inactive, to be fair, right? As long as it's not our problem, let's not deal with this. And now we need to be part of the solution, which I think is the best business opportunity we will have, to be fair.
Yeah, and perhaps our pandemic is showing us that also at a daily basis. And I fully agree with you that the interconnection between NGOs, society, and corporates for profit. Yeah, that's a very integrative look at the situation. We are all there for the same target group, if you wish. And this is society, right?
I think
So
it is.
yeah, let's move up that spiral of corporate success on this higher level of capitalism. Fred, you wanted to say something else, maybe to wrap up our view
sort of.
on shared value. Yeah.
So I think there are many ideas here, and of course, people. Fortunately, businesses are free still to decide what their goals are, right? But we need to be clear on that, and I hope it provides some additional ideas. I know many are working on it, have been involved, but that's one single very strong reason to it. The millennials and the people that are now trained, our own children, the children that come from business school, from tech schools, from anywhere, expect this. Yep. So even if it's just how do we get the right talent and the right people working, I do not really see any alternative to bringing this into our business. I hope for most it's not just a reactive thing and we need to do this, but that we now, after all these pressures we got on business, that we can say, well, wait a minute, this is what a firm is for, and we now have these hybrid measures, and we now see that we can with all our technology and all our assets can help move society forward, and hopefully will not expect the government to take the only role in protecting us against pandemics, because it's clear that that's not working. And the costs are too high.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean the government shouldn't do something, but that traditional split is no longer gonna work, and it may need a next generation to find that normal. But as board members, we can certainly push it and see that working for society is not bad for the bottom line.
Correct. And also, I believe as board members, we can really serve with our experiences to this current generation that is fully aware of how to integrate the different worlds, as we call them, and how they can work together with the corporate world and the business arena as it exists right now. So there's a beautiful role to play, and I want to thank you, Fred, for this second podcast. It's a joy. Let's come back soon, and I wish you a very nice evening and speak to you soon. Thank you very much.